Can you share with us your understanding of what's happening in Ukraine and why is it happening now?
Well, yes, I can. I think the first thing to say is that I'm not an expert, but I did study Russian and Russian history at university. On top of that, I also lived and worked in Kiev for 2 years, so I have some knowledge. To put it very simply, it's quite a complex issue. But for example, in Turkey, people think of Russia and Ukraine as synonymous, which is understandable because the country of Ukraine has only existed as an independent country for the last 30 years. It came about after the collapse of the Soviet Union, both during Soviet times and before the communist Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, although there was a degree of nationalism in what we now consider Ukraine, it was never a country in its own right. Therefore, ethnically, Russians and Ukrainians are the same. And indeed, after independence, Ukrainians didn't see themselves as Ukrainian. They identified mostly as Slavs. And in fact, they were in awe of its neighboring partner, Russia, and Russian people, and indeed were admirers of Putin. Now, what's really happening is Putin really wants to re-establish the former Soviet Union, the former Tsarist Russian Empire, as he sees Russia and Ukraine as indivisible. And therefore, that's why he's decided to invade Ukraine. He sees the government of Ukraine as a neo-Nazi regime, and he feels it's his Slavic duty to protect the people of Ukraine. Why now? I mean, it's something that's been on the cards for a long time. It really started in 2014 when Russia annexed the Crimea, which is in southern Ukraine on the Black Sea. And I think it was simply delayed because of the COVID pandemic.
Do you think economic sanctions imposed on Russia by Western countries like the US, UK, and EU will have any effect?
Well, that's a tough one to answer because it's something I'm sure that Putin planned for in advance. He knew the West would try to isolate Russia from the world's financial systems and institutions. There are signs now that the economic sanctions are beginning to bite. For example, today we heard that the Russian money, the ruble, was devalued by about 30%. So it will have some effect, but I don't think it will stop the military might that Russia has.
What do you think the final outcome will be?
Well, that's a tough one. I think it's inevitable, given Russia's might, that even though the Ukrainians are fighting back bravely, I think they will, and quite soon, will be overwhelmed. I see this becoming a very long and protracted conflict with some kind of puppet government installed in Ukraine, but a lot of resistance, mostly on the streets. There will be street fighting, I'm sure, a lot of resistance to this Russian takeover. And it could go on for months, possibly even years.